Yo, what's going on, guys? And today we're doing my off-season preview primer. If you guys haven't been around, this is like the third or fourth year that we're doing this. We just did one for the Washington Wizards. Now we're doing the Utah Jazz today. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. What do you guys think of this offseason? What are the biggest and most important things that need to happen for the Utah Jazz? Hit that like and subscribe button. Shout out to ESPN for some of this information. And what we do here is we're going to just go through everything, the draft picks, the future assets, what the season outlook is, what we're hearing, and what they need to do going forward. So then when the lottery happens, we can give our predictions. We'll also talk about some of the contracts that we expect, a little there, a little that. Let's get right into it. So basically, the Utah Jazz right here, the 23 to 24, that was a weird way to say that. In 2023 to 2024, they went 31-51. What a weird way to say that. This year, they have the 8th pick currently slotted, the 29th pick from OKC, and the 32nd overall pick from the Wizards. They have the 6% chance to land the number 1 pick, and their current free agents, they have 3 restricted free agents in Johnny Juzang, Micah Potter, and Kira Lewis Jr. Then Taylor Horton-Tucker, Chris Dunn, Luka Šamanić are all unrestricted free agents. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see who they choose to keep, because even Kira Lewis Jr., he didn't play much for the Pelicans or the Raptors and even the Jazz. So I'm pretty sure he's just going to be selling the 11 free agency. I think they'll bring back Juzang and Potter on cheap deals so that they could resign them to like 2-3-year deals, similar to what Jared Vanderbilt, Jordan McLaughlin, and Naz Reid got when they were free agents under Gerson Rosas a few years ago for the Timberwolves. If you guys remember that, look into their deals. So the whole thing with the Jazz is I think they need to figure out their core, which they do, like Kessler, Lowry, Keontae George. Now the rest of the roster, that's still 12 spaces that they need to fit. Okay, who's going to be the guys moving forward? Clearly, you have 2 first-round picks that you're probably going to use. Now, Justin Zanuck said that their goal is to continue to develop their players and to put them in competitive environments, have them experience playing meaningful games, and they don't want to put them on a timeline. And again, they went 31-51. There was at points in the season. They had a rough start to the year, then they roared back, and then they kind of faltered, and then they came back up. It was an up and down season for the Utah Jazz. They did have injuries. Lowry is legit, okay? And so I think personally the Jazz have an all-star, borderline all-NBA player in Lauri Markkanen, along with, I think, solid veterans in Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, John Collins. That you could say right there, those 4 dudes, plus you counting Keontae George, Taylor Hendricks, Brice Sensabaugh, and Walker Kessler, right there, that's 8 dudes. That 8 of those dudes, and 8 dudes that I think are guaranteed or should be on the roster moving forward. And 8 of their players are actually under 23, and 4 of those players are Keontae, Taylor, Brice, and Walker. So Zanuck and the front office obviously have to fight off the impulsive nature of wanting to accelerate the rebuild. The Jazz were a 500 team heading into the deadline, and it would have been easy to package future assets and try to get into play-in, but the Jazz went 5-25 after the deadline this season, after going 8-16 after the deadline in 22-23. Now, the Jazz entered the offseason as the only team with both multiple, first-round picks in June and more than $40 million in cap space. Last year, they used their cap space to acquire John Collins and then renegotiate the contract of Jordan Clarkson. This offseason, they could have $40 million in cap space to go ahead and get themselves free agents. So I think that's going to be particularly interesting. And, they could have even more if they renounced and waived the non-guaranteed contracts of Darius Bazley and Kenneth Lofton. Both contracts increased to $400K protection if they're on the roster past July 25th. Markkanen has an $18 million contract that becomes guaranteed on June 28th. And if the Jazz stay over the cap, they will have an $8 million room mid-level exception. So besides the development of their young players, there's seemingly a 3-step process to this offseason. The first is going to be the June draft. The Utah picks have 3 picks in the top 31, So because second apron teams are no longer allowed to buy draft picks from cash, the Utah Jazz could flip the Clippers first or Pistons second for additional assets. The second is the direction with the cap space. Utah could renegotiate Markkanen's contract to cap the space and then use the balance in free agency or trades. However, Markkanen is not renegotiation eligible until August 6th. So if the Jazz pass on renegotiation, Utah would need to spend at least $21 million by the first day of the regular season to meet the salary floor requirements. And finally, how do they choose which of the three highest paid players are the guys long term? I think that aren't Lauri Markkanen, obviously. So outside of Lauri Markkanen, is John Collins, Colin Sexton, or Clarkson the guys long term? I think you move on from Clarkson. Easy. I think Colin Sexton's nice, but he's going to have a defensive flaw, and he's not like an elite playmaker. So, and he's more probably suited to be a sixth man. I think you go with John Collins because he kind of fits perfectly next to Lowry and Walker, and having those three in your front court means you only need one more front court player to be like a depth guy, and then you have Taylor Hagendricks who can come as a combo forward and a small ball five. So I think that works perfect, and you decide there. But the Jazz have two options, obviously, when it comes to Markkanen. The unlikely one, Bobby Marks says, is signing a 4-year, $113 million starting in June with a team-friendly salary of $25 million on the first year, and that's less than what Lauri Markkanen could sign a free agent in 25. And the maximum salary next season is $44 million. The more viable option is that Utah uses the available cap space to renegotiate and then extend his contract, give him a big payday this coming year, and then have it be front-loaded so that following years it just drops. So it'd be like 40, increase his current salary of $18 million to $42 this year, and then it extend him for an additional $202 over 4 years. And they are also permitted to decrease the renegotiated salary up to 40%, and then extend off that number. Markkanen continues to play at an all-star level, almost an NBA level. He flirted with a 50-40-90 stat line. So this past offseason, they drafted George, Hendricks, and Sensabaugh, so they're going to continue to develop that. In the past 2 seasons, they've used 54 different starting lineups. And obviously, they benefited from the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trade. As, next year, they're going to have unprotected first from Cleveland and Minnesota. And the Jazz are also owed the 27 and 29 unprotected first from Cleveland and an unprotected 27 first from Minnesota, and top 5 29 protected pick from Minnesota in 2029. So Utah also has the rights to swap first with Minnesota, and Cleveland top 8 protected with Cleveland in 28. Utah's also owed the top 5 protected first from the Lakers in 2027, and the Jazz are tied with San Antonio for the second most tradable first in the next 7 years with 9, and they have 3 second-round picks available. So when you look at that, you just know this is going to be a team that has just so many assets to go out and get themselves guys. And again, I think the biggest thing when you look at the Utah Jazz, what is going to be solved or what needs to be solved, what is the core? We talked about it. Priest, Keontae, Taylor, and Walker are the 4 young dudes, and then the 4 vets that make sense that we're going to see: Lowry, John Collins, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson. But all 4 of those vets, they're making a bunch of money, and Lowry's going to get an extension. If you move off of, the Jazz's salary, if you look at it, if you can move off of the money, I think a lot of people don't realize how beneficial it would be for them to go ahead and try to expand or, try to decrease their salaries, which I personally think it would be most beneficial. Like, listen to this. So the Utah Jazz, if you guys aren't aware, you want to hear what their salaries are? Their salaries this upcoming season is pretty ridiculous in terms of what they're paying Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson and John Collins. So those 3 together are making almost $60 million. That's insane. No offense to those guys. Like, those guys deserve their money, rightfully so. But just Clarkson and Colin Sexton are making $32 million between the 2. And I think they only need one of those guys because they both play the same thing. Yes, obviously, Colin Sexton is the better playmaker. And if you really want to give your younger guys more touches shooting-wise, I would trade Clarkson and I understand trying to trade both, so then you can give your young guys runs, and then in the draft, maybe draft a point guard like Stephen Castle, and you'll have to give him a minute. So for me, I understand it from that standpoint, but that's basically going to be it from me today. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think of my preview for the Utah Jazz? We have the other, what is it? So far, there are 14 teams outside of the playoffs after the play-in. So, 12 more teams coming up over the coming days. So peace out, guys. Love y'all.